Hi and welcome to Founders, the show that looks at the people behind some of the world's most exciting companies. This is the first in a series of Fireside chats with company founders. It's an informal discussion around how they got started and grew their business. In this episode, we catch up with Joel Gascoigne, co-founder and CEO of Buffer. If you don't know, Buffer was founded in 2010 as a way to easily schedule tweets. Within a few years, Buffer has become one of the leading social management tools on the web, with over 2.5 million users and 40,000 paying subscribers. Coming up, we ask why Buffer has a distributed team, what that means and how it works, plus Joel's radical stance on transparency and company culture. Why did he publish the salaries of all Buffer employees online for the world to see? But first of all, we ask Joel, how did it all start?
So Buffer is a social media management tool for individuals and small businesses. We help people mainly with publishing on the social media, so just the publishing side. So we help people to have a consistent flow of tweets and Facebook posts and other social media going out for their business. And then we give people detailed analytics around all of that as well. And we have about 40,000 paying customers right now, about 2.5 million registered users. And I'll be sharing more numbers along the way.
Absolutely. So how did you come up with the idea? When was it? Where were you?
Yeah, I was right here. I was, so actually the previous startup that I did called One Page, which Simon mentioned, was right over there. It says Be Seen on the door. So I was actually part of the Be Seen program with One Page. That was really, really fun. And so I'd been doing One Page for about a year and a half, not having too much success, making a lot of different mistakes along the way. And then towards the end of that, I was thinking, do I try and persevere with One Page or do I try other ideas that I'm having? And at that point, I'd been using Twitter for about a year and a half, about the same amount of time that I've been doing One Page. And during that time, I'd been, sharing all the things I've been learning, mistakes I've been making, and just generally finding Twitter really useful for connecting with other people, other startups. Especially I was jumping about between different communities, being in Sheffield and where I'm originally from, and then coming here and trying to, get to know other people doing startups. And so I had this idea, which was, I realized whenever I would share articles on Twitter that I found, blog posts about startups and web development, other things that I was interested in, I found that people would generally engage with those tweets, and it would be a way for conversation to start to happen. And I would even end up meeting people this way, and things would be taken offline, and great things would happen. So as soon as that started to happen, I thought, okay, I should do more of this. So I started being quite disciplined about reading more and more articles, and I started using Google Reader, things like that, and got to a point where I was using Google Reader, and I'd have like a reading session in the morning, read about 20 different articles, 20 or 30 articles, and I would find maybe 10 that I wanted to share on Twitter. And I quickly ran into this problem that if I was sharing all of those articles during my 20-minute reading session, then I was basically flooding my stream with 10 tweets all in one go, and that wasn't great for my followers, and it also wasn't great for me because I had nothing else to share for the rest of the day. So that was kind of the initial idea for Buffer was, I really want to spread these tweets out throughout the day. And the first thing I did was to try and find tools that would let me do this. So I used Hootsuite and TweetDeck, and the thing that I found was that with those tools you had to specifically choose the date and the time anytime you would schedule a tweet. So I would have to say, this day at 3 p.m. or whatever, and all I really wanted to do was space out those tweets. So I ended up having a notepad, and I would open this notepad and write in the notepad the last time that I'd scheduled a tweet for, and so that the next time I came back to it I could add 3-4 hours onto it, because all I wanted to do was spread them out. And so that's when I realised this is quite cumbersome for me, and maybe other people have this problem as well. and that was where the idea kind of came from for Buffer.
When you started, it was very, very simple as a tool, especially compared to when you look at what it is now, which is a really full-featured platform. How simple did you start?
Yeah, to give an idea, the first version of Buffer was, you could only use it for Twitter to begin with, and you could actually only use it for one Twitter account as well. There was no analytics at all, so it was literally just this tool to queue up tweets and have them go out on a regular rolling schedule. So you would sign up, you would have to set up your scheduled times for the day, for every day, and then you would connect the Twitter account, and that was it. That's all it would do.
And you'd been, I guess, from some of the lessons you'd learned at your previous startups, you'd been reading stuff around lean startup and stuff like that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how you implemented that with Buffer?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had come across the lean startup concepts halfway through doing one page, and they just really, really clicked with me because I did computer science. I'm very scientifically minded, and it was this thing where it turned kind of an art of entrepreneurship in a way into more of a science that I could think about logically and try and think, try this, experiment with this, these kinds of things. So it really resonated with me, and then I tried to start implementing it, and I realized implementing it is easier said than done. It's one of these things where it can feel like common sense, but once you start trying to do it, you realize it's really quite hard to be disciplined about these things. What I ended up doing, so I experimented with Lean Startup a few times with one page and basically didn't quite make it work. But when I had the idea for Buffer, I decided I want to be really disciplined and try and follow it very closely. What I ended up doing was, which is how I kind of started Buffer, was instead of building the whole product right away and then seeing if people would use it, which would take several months and eventually might actually turn out to be something that people didn't really want. I wanted to validate in advance whether this is something that people want. And this is something we've built into our product process now in a big way. And so the way that I did that was I created a very simple 2-page website which had a landing page where it would basically describe what the product was, and it made it look like the product existed at this point. So it would have a heading and description of Buffer, and then there was a plans and pricing button, and for anyone that would just land on that website, it would look like the product existed. And then when you click plans and pricing, the next page would just say, "Oops, sorry, you've called us too soon. We're not quite ready yet." And then there'll be a box to put your email in if you want to find out when it's ready or find out more information.
And that work, you got enough confidence that people did actually want to go through the pricing all the way to purchase to actually go, do you know what, I'm going to stop. At the time you were doing a bit of freelancing work, I'm going to stop freelancing, I'm going to now actually put some real time into making Buffer work.
Yeah, the key was that it wasn't just getting a few emails that was the confidence. It was from those emails, then emailing every single email, emailing the people individually, personal email from me, and trying to get having conversations via email, having some Skype calls with people, and then really asking people about their problems with social media and seeing whether this does actually solve one of their problems. And I got enough of that kind of confidence that helped me to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with this.
Cool. And then I guess you were here for a number of months with Buffer when you first started, and then you decided to move to San Francisco. Why did you decide to move?
Yeah, I was here. So, and you kind of asked this in the last question, and so I was actually doing freelance web development still at the start of Buffer for the first 4 or 5 months. So it was kind of a not just a instant rocket ship kind of thing. It was a fairly slow start. The first month's revenue was $20. So in some ways you could look at that and say, well, that was good you tried that, but let's leave it there. But yeah, for me it was a big moment because I'd done freelance web development things, but I kind of got this idea in my head of how about if you can create a product and you get away from that hourly wage of just charging for your time. And that for me was the thing that clicked when I got those first few payments. It was like, wow, these people are paying on a monthly basis for this product now, and those payments happened, completely separate from the time I've put into this. And these people will be paying next month, and hopefully I get more people throughout the month. And that's really how it compounded, and now we're our revenue is about $580,000 a month in revenue, and it's just grown from that $20, compounding month after month since then, and it's been about 4.5 years now. But yeah, the idea to go to San Francisco came when we got about 5 months in, and by that time my co-founder Leo joined me. We met at Warwick University, and he joined me a few months in, and it really worked, and we started to work really well together. And it was just something where, I mentioned that I've been sharing these articles about startups and things, and it just so happened that many of these startups were coming from Silicon Valley. There were people that were based in San Francisco and Silicon Valley writing about startups, and I found that I got so involved with that community just through Twitter that people would even start to say to me like, "Oh, are you going to be at this event that's on tomorrow?" And I'd be like, "Well, I'm kind of halfway around the other side of the world, so I'm probably not going to be able to make it." But it was one of these things where for me it just became something where I really had to satisfy that curiosity of like, what is this like mythical place that you read about and that people get millions of dollars of funding when they arrive there.
Brilliant. So you arrived in San Francisco, not that long after that you were at 55,000 users. You were doing $13,000 a month in recurring revenue.
It was a bit less than that at that point. That was about 6 months after we'd been in San Francisco, those numbers.
Right, and at that point you decided to raise money. So you decided to raise $450,000, is that right? Why did you decide to raise it? Did it change your company? What was your thinking there?
Yeah, when we first arrived to San Francisco, we were kind of fresh off the boat, didn't know anybody at all, and so we tried to get in touch with a few different people who we could learn from about the scene, how it all works there. And we were really lucky, one person in particular that we managed to, we actually got frozen yogurt with him in Mountain View in Silicon Valley, was a guy called Heaton Shah, and he's the co-founder of Kissmetrics and Crazy Egg, and he's had several successful companies, and he's a angel investor and things. And we managed to get this meeting with him, and he just gave us a lot of confidence. And through that meeting and meeting a few other people, we just realized that we were in this position where we'd found something that was working, it was growing fast, but we couldn't, actually build the features and fix things as fast as that demand was there. And it was this odd situation where actually the revenues were not that high yet. They were maybe a few $1,000s a month, and we left Birmingham at the point where we could manage to afford to live in Birmingham and stop working here. And that was one of the mistakes we made, was to fly to San Francisco at the point when we could afford to live in Birmingham, and realised that it costs maybe 3 or 4 times as much to live in San Francisco. So it was a tough period of time, but we had this weird thing of like we can't afford, or like we don't have that high revenues, but we still need to grow much faster than we're currently growing in terms of like building things out.
Brilliant. I've got loads of questions coming in, which I will answer. So if you've got any questions, you put them on Twitter. Simon is putting into themes, and I've got them in front of me, so they will get answered. But kind of carrying on with the story there, you raised money. You've now got a few very well-known investors on board with you. You decided to grow your team not in kind of a physical office, but distributed around the world. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I can just give a little bit of context. So we've had 2 rounds of funding during that journey. So the first round of funding was $450,000, which was about 6 months after we first got to San Francisco that we raised that round. That helped us a lot. And then a couple of years later, which was just at the end of last year, we also raised $3.5 million, which was our second round of funding. And yeah, what happened was during this journey, we got to San Francisco. We managed to get into an accelerator program in San Francisco called AngelPad. It was really, really helpful for us, we were having those struggles at that time with affording to live. in San Francisco, and it really helped us a lot there, and then we could grow the team immediately and just start moving a lot faster. So that was a really big turning point for us. But then what happened was, just after we raised that funding, we were kind of coming to the end of the time that we were able to be in the US, without a visa, and we started to look into the visa process, and we got a little bit along that process, and then we basically got hit with the quota being reached for the visas, for how many visas they could give out in the US. And so suddenly we're in this position where we're not going to be able to get visas. We have to wait another year before we're going to be able to get the visa and be in the US with a visa. And we kind of just sat down and said, what should we do at this point? And we decided that rather than, going back here, we had such an exciting time over there, and I love Birmingham, but we just decided, let's go somewhere else. So we basically opened Google Maps, had a look around, and ended up deciding to go to Hong Kong. So basically what basically happened was we closed this $450,000, took the money and went off to Hong Kong.
And your investors were fine with that? You discussed it with them, or you just go, you're not going to go?
Surprisingly, a lot of them were really, they said, oh, I've been to Hong Kong, but make sure you check this restaurant out and things. So almost all of them were really on board with it. I think a little bit later we found that maybe a couple of people were not completely happy. But so we stayed in Hong Kong for 6 months, and we kept growing the product. We were quite happy to be there because we've been really in this Silicon Valley kind of environment of being super focused on the fundraising and things, and we were quite happy to get out of that bubble a little bit and focus completely on product development for a while. And so we spent 6 months in Hong Kong, and then after that we decided to go to Tel Aviv. We spent 3 months in Tel Aviv, and then during that time we managed to get the visas, and we were able to eventually get back to San Francisco. But what happened was, during that time we grew the team, and we became maybe 7 or 8 people in that time. And suddenly we had this team that was spread across Hong Kong and then Tel Aviv, but also in the UK, where we started to hire the first few people. And that's kind of where we hit this decision of okay, we've grown this far, we are working remotely, we're distributed, and should we keep going down that path, or should we try and get everyone together in an office? And we for a few reasons, we decided to go down that path and be a fully distributed team. And today we're 42 people spread across, I think it's 28 different cities in 4 continents. So mostly it's just one person in each place, and we just work using various different online tools to make that all work.
Wow. So you've grown a team. You were so everyone's asking basically. You base a lot of, you talk a lot about in your kind of buffer journey and on social media and in the news about your kind of culture and your beliefs of how you should set a company up with transparency across the business. So could you talk a little about that?
Yeah, I think so. The journey for us with transparency, to give a little context around some of the things we've done there, we've kind of become fairly well known for transparency and being a self-managed company. We don't have managers within the company. Also being a distributed team where people can be wherever they choose to be and even travel while they're working and things. And all these things combined kind of make up the buffer culture in a way. And that's something that we've ended up becoming almost as well known for the culture as for the product. So sometimes people even discover the culture and some of the things we're doing there before the product. And in terms of transparency specifically, we've been quite well known for one of the fairly controversial things that we did was we've actually published everyone's salary within the company. So if you Google buffer salaries, you can actually go and find every person's salary in the company. It's literally a spreadsheet with their name and their salary and their role and all the different things that make up what salary they've got to. But these are all things that for us developed gradually over time, and we just kept adding one thing onto the next of things that we intuitively felt like were things we should do. And it all started with just simple things like sharing on Twitter some of our numbers and just in meetings and things, and ending up getting some really great advice simply because we opened up, and therefore the other person opened up. And over time, we found that all these things just help us to have such a trusting workplace where, because everything is completely open, everyone can feel comfortable. There's nothing being hidden and things like that.
How do you hire people? Do you hire people to fit the culture, or do you hire amazing people and then try and teach them the culture? And have you tried both, and what's worked?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Initially, I didn't know what culture was until we hit about eight or nine people and realised that all these team dynamics and things like that really come into play. And that's when I started to realise that company culture was a thing that I needed to read into and learn about. And so early on we were hiring, primarily based on skill and finding people that would just fit the gaps in terms of skill that we needed. And over time we realised that was kind of a mistake in a way, and we had to make some adjustments. Once we did, figure out that we needed to have a strong culture, and what we did was we decided to put that culture into words once we were about 9 or 10 people, and in putting it into words it suddenly became very clear, and it helped us to really hire by those values that we decided to put in place. And it was a very collaborative thing for us to put the values together, so that's how we did it. We asked everyone in the team how they would describe the culture that we already had but just wasn't in words. And so then ever since then we've hired really completely based on culture fit, and the experience and the role is still very important, but it's probably, to give an idea, we generally have 4 interviews in the hiring process, and 3 of them will be completely focused around culture fit, and 1 is probably based around talking around the role.
Have you ever had amazing people that have applied and you really, really wanted them for their technical or their history and experience, but they just didn't quite fit, and what do you do in that sort of situation?
Yeah, it happens fairly frequently, and especially right now because we're really in a phase of wanting to grow really, really fast. We know that there's so much we should be doing that's validated and that we just need to act on, and so it does happen. And by now it's so kind of ingrained for us that we hire by those cultural values, so it won't go very far, because what we've ended up with is 42 people that are all aligned around those values that we've got, and someone would really stand out and it just wouldn't work. But yeah, in the past we've had times where it's really been this struggle, especially in the earlier days when we were just starting to realise what the culture was and trying to be disciplined about culture fit. There was definitely cases where we thought it's going to be really tough, especially if someone in the team that we realise that is not a perfect fit, and we have to make that difficult call, especially when there's just great people that work, are so productive and can do so much and so skilled, and we realise it's just there's this misalignment of values, but we still have to make that call, and that's what we've decided to do.
Great. So Amy on Twitter asked, are there any dark sides to being completely transparent? And I guess there's something to add to that. Are there people that transparency doesn't really suit?
Yeah, I think so. The fun thing is we've literally tried to kind of experiment with everything in terms of transparency. So in our values, we have 10 values. We phrase the transparency value as default to transparency. So it's this idea that everything is transparent unless there's a really, really good reason for it not to be transparent. That's kind of where we start out. So one thing that for the longest time wasn't transparent, and we decided to, we thought, everything else, many of these things were things where, for example, with salaries, we made it fully transparent, and we ended up getting so much attention for that and press and things. And what we thought was going to happen was we're going to read some of these articles, and we thought the first comment we're going to read is going to tell us exactly why we should not have done this, and a very, very good reason why this just doesn't happen. And the thing was, we didn't find that comment. There was many different kind of things that people think will happen, or generally kind of some fears or things around having salaries completely transparent. But overall, a lot of things that we've made transparent had a really, really positive impact for the culture and the trust within the team and things like that.
But if you've got an entirely open formula for how salaries are calculated, but if I'm slightly, if I'm in that lower kind of 25% or 50%, and I know exactly what everyone else is earning, I think I should be in near that top. Doesn't that disgruntle me as an employee?
It might do, but then you're going to talk about it, right? So that's better than, and in general what happens is that you don't really know, or you kind of have an idea, and a lot of things just get talked about, on the sides, or it's just generally, this kind of politics that starts to emerge. And for us, it's something where it's very actionable. There's a reason why that salary is that salary. It's based on your role, your level of experience, your location, a few other factors. So these are things you can change. You can talk to people about those things. So I think it turns out better. But one thing that we experimented with and didn't quite work out is we had an experiment for a little while of completely transparent feedback with each other within the team. So maybe you laugh, like I think maybe we should have known in advance, but this one we decided to test it anyway. So anytime you would give feedback to somebody, it would be completely transparent. Potentially people would see it before the person that you're giving feedback to sees it. And that one was a failure for us, and we've learned that there's human emotions and things involved that we really have to take into account, and it's not just a completely rational thing. So
you've got these 42 people now. You're growing at the moment. You have something called, because you're all remote and distributed, you have something called buffer retreats. What is it like turning up with 42 people who are exactly the same as you, or fit into this culture so well? And what is a buffer retreat?
They're not necessarily exactly the same. It's funny because we are literally from 27, 28 different cities. So it's, in some ways, I think we're really aligned around the values, but we're also really, really diverse group of people, potentially a lot more diverse than it would be if everyone's from the same city. But the retreats are really, really fun to talk about. So it's something that we do. We realize that we can work really efficiently as a distributed team working remotely, but at the same time there's something that you just don't get unless you meet in person and you actually know someone face to face. You've understood, there's a deeper thing there. So that's something that we do. So around every 6 months we get the whole team together in a different place in the world each time. So there's been 6 so far. We've been to Cape Town, Thailand, Sydney, Iceland, and so the most recent one was in Iceland. And we also, with the most recent one, we also invited significant others of team members. So we ended up with about 45 people there in total, and we basically spent a week and a half together, working together and doing fun activities together, and really just bonding. And we found that once we returned from those retreats back to wherever we happen to be, then the communication we have with each other is taken to a different level, where you kind of you know the tone of someone's voice, their mannerism, things like that, and you kind of read people's emails and messages in HipChat and things like that in a different way, and so it's very, very, very important for us.
Amazing.
Also a lot of fun.
So you're working with. You can work anywhere you like. You're getting great salaries. You get fully expenses paid buffer retreats.
Yep.
One of the other things you've tried, and you touched upon it, but maybe you could expand on it a little bit, is about self-management. Talk a little bit about that, and how's it worked for you?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey for us. So about 9 months ago, we discovered a book called Reinventing Organizations, which I could highly, highly recommend. And it basically talked about this idea of a new style of company structure of management, which is emerging, and it's quite persuasive to talk about. This is something that's happening. There's several examples of companies in the world that do this and basically operate without managers. And there's examples in the book of 10,000 person companies with no managers at all. And so this is something that for us, we found that we've kind of been on this path a little bit already. We're a distributed team, so it makes sense to have distributed decision making rather than kind of having top-down decision making. And so once we found the book, we decided we'll go all in there and experiment with that as well. And so that's been the journey that we've ended up on for the last 6 to 9 months, is exploring. We basically removed the manager role. Those people that had that role took on different roles, and we've tried a lot of different things and made some mistakes there and things, and now it's really starting to evolve to a point where we feel quite happy about the self-management kind of setup that we have.
So in that kind of process, I guess the first thing you do is you remove managers. How does that work on a kind of a practical level of who's in charge of a product if they're not a manager? How do you kind of structure that?
Yeah, so what we've ended up with is we have several different areas of the company. So basically the product gets split up into different areas, and there's small teams in all these areas, and those teams, they're quite broad areas. It might be the whole of the dashboard experience, or the whole of one customer segment, or the whole iPhone app or something like that. And they basically have full autonomy to kind of work in that area. And there's no manager there's no one person that's a manager in there. It's a group of five or so people that have different kind of expertise in that area, and they work together and make things happen. And that's how we work. And we do have some strategy high level roles that happen, and we also have the concept of mentorship and giving mentoring people and having advice shared, but there is no one's reporting to anyone else. Everything is shared as advice, and then you choose whether to act on that. But one of the concepts is something called the advice process, which is what another company does, and is this idea that anyone can do anything in the company as long as you get advice from the people that have expertise on that, or that know about that area. And so we use the advice process for a lot of these things. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. No one's reporting to anyone, but there's different roles that are being fulfilled by different people.
So what happens if someone's not a superhero and joins your team? How does that process of asking them to leave, if no one's responsible for it, happen?
Yeah, we're right in the middle of figuring that one out, and that's one of the things that I think we lost our discipline a little bit on that in the last 9 months maybe, and I think before that we were very disciplined about the culture fit and everything, but it was kind of based around a manager kind of hierarchy setup. So what we have is when you join Buffer, we have something that we call the Buffer Bootcamp, and it's a 45-day kind of trial period before you fully join the team. And so you're technically a contractor during that period. And that time is really for the individual as much as for us to figure out if this feels like a good fit, because a lot of unusual things we're doing, remote working might be something that's new for you, all these different things. And so during that time, the system we've come up with is we have 3 different buddies that help that team member to have as successful as possible Buffer Bootcamp. And we have one role buddy, which is helping the team member to learn their role and just be thinking in terms of focusing on improving themselves in terms of their role. One culture buddy, which is focused around introducing them to all the different aspects of the Buffer culture. And then we have the leader buddy, which is kind of someone that's a bit more experienced maybe in the team and has probably gone through some tough conversations having to maybe let somebody go. And so the leader buddy is able to kind of mentor the other 2 buddies, and as a group, those 3 buddies will talk with each other about how that bootcamp's going, and then share feedback and very immediately to the bootcamper along that 45-day kind of journey for them. And basically it'll become clear as the weeks go on, and we try and not have things unclear. So you, as a person in the Buffer Bootcamp, you will know how it's going, and you will know what you might need to adjust to kind of try and make it work. Things.
Great. So your style of kind of focusing on culture, focusing on the people, making everyone works really well together is I guess in quite stark contrast to what we see with like Rocket Internet and the Samba Brothers, who are all about, I don't care about the individual at all. If you make a mistake, you're fired. You know, they're growing very fast. Are you impacting your growth because of your focus on culture?
I think we probably are, but I think we're, you know, I don't want to wake up in a few years' time and just hate, you know, going to work, even if that just means going to my desk. I don't want to, you know, end up with a culture and that's something that I've heard several times from different founders, different entrepreneurs, is one of the key reasons people end up selling their company is because they've just gotten to a point where they just don't enjoy it anymore. And so I think that's one of the key things we've continually been focused around, is anytime something doesn't feel right, we start to feel like we're not enjoying it. If anyone in the team, then we just talk about that and try and make changes. And I think the other part of it for me is with that question is that I think I have quite like an idealistic utopian personality where I do believe that we can that we could actually go faster by having these things in place, because you know the increased trust, like everyone is really excited about their work. There's these small teams that are fully autonomous. Like, why wouldn't we be able to grow just as fast, if not faster, than the traditional setup?
Makes sense. So you've just come back from Hawaii. Is that right? You've got 6 months there. Where are you off to next?
I'm heading to New York in a week's time. I'm going to live there for a few months. But yeah, right now I don't have a fixed location. I'm just living a few months in one place and the next place.
So you had 6 months in Hawaii?
I had 4 months in Hawaii. Yeah.
And then you're going snowboarding for 6 months. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to be in New York for 3 months, and then I'm not sure. I'm kind of 95% sure that after that I'm going to maybe go to Colorado and live in like a ski town and just do some skiing and work from there. And
manage your company. So that kind of, you know, to put that in context, you're traveling the world, you're having a great lifestyle, but your company's, you know, pretty valuable right now. So the last investment round you raised, can you talk a little bit about what kind of valuation was that at, and why did you raise it? Because I think that's a really, you know, very unusual story.
Yeah, so it's a good one. So yeah, we raised this recent round, 3.5 million at a 60 million valuation. And to give a little bit of background around that, it's been an interesting journey for us, where the normal cycle you end up on when you raise a seed round in Silicon Valley, which is what we did when we raised the 450,000, is that you end up on this like 12 to 18 month cycle where after that time, you're probably going to raise another round, which is called the Series A, and then you raise the Series B, and basically you continually raise rounds, and generally most startups are not profitable at all the whole time until you get to Series D or E and an IPO, and then maybe you hit profitability after that. And the idea is that, you know, if you're profitable, then you're probably not growing as fast as you could be.
You're really profitable, right? I mean, you're making so much money you don't know what to do with it. I'm not joking.
Well, yeah, we are definitely kind of at this point where we're trying to grow the team as fast as we can, and the bank balance is going up each month, and I think in some ways we're leaving money on the table by not growing faster. But the thing that happened for us was, so after we raised the seed round, about a year later, we actually started to hit a point where the growth rate was slowing a little bit, and we were starting to actually burn cash, and the bank balance was going down and things. So I you know, Leo, my co-founder, and I started to chat at that time and said, you know, what should we do? And we thought we might need to raise another round of funding at that time, which would be like the normal path you would go down. And for us, we really thought about it, and we realized that there was an opportunity that we could try taking on, which was around, we call it Buffer for Business. We ended up launching, which is kind of launching the product more into the larger business and enterprise market. Yep. And so we did that, and luckily that kind of turned everything around, and we grew you know, fast after that, and we hit profitability again. And then since then we've kind of always been profitable since that point, luckily, and so that's given us a lot more options. And along the journey, we've also been quite lucky to have interest from other companies to acquire us. So we've had a few different acquisition offers come up along the way, and what happened was that we've had a few and we turned them down and things, and one came along that was pretty large and really, made us think really, really hard. And it's one of those things where once you get an offer at that level, I mean, to give an idea, we raised at the 60 million valuation, and it was significantly higher than that. So, when you get an offer like that, it really starts to make you question, like, what are we doing here? Like, what is the purpose of your life in a way? Like, why you. So, for us, we started to think really hard around that, and in the end, we decided to turn that down. And the reason behind that was that we realized that, well, firstly, we realized that, we'd hit profitability. A lot of the risks we'd kind of removed from the business. So that was one thing. But the other part of it was that with transparency, being a distributed team, all the things we're doing around company culture, we realized that we had hit a point where we'd ended up being part of a few different movements that are happening and kind of being a big part of the conversation around these movements. People started to use our salary formula. We'd find spreadsheets and other companies that were actually basing their salaries and making them completely public and things like that. And we just realized that suddenly it had become bigger than the product itself, bigger than Buffer. And so we decided we can't, we're not done here. We have to keep going and see where this leads. And I also had an experience where, when we turned offers down in the past, I found that the immediate 6 months after that, I would have so many learnings. There'd be the first people I'd fire, or lots of other things would come up, and I found that I didn't want to sell and then have to kind of start again and go several years to get to the same point, to have those next learnings that come after this point. So that's so we turned this offer down, but it really made us question, what should we do? And one of the key questions that came up is, if we're not going to sell, then how do the investors get a return on this? If we're going to really just go long term now, how does that work? And it was right around that time that I discovered a little presentation by Phil Libin, the CEO of Evernote, and he talked about this idea that you can actually decouple liquidity from exit. And so the idea that you don't need to sell your company to give investors or founders or early team members a return. You can actually sell part of your shares and do that. So we spoke with some of our investors, our advisors. Heaton was a key person we spoke to after we kind of turned that offer down, and several people said, well, what are you going to do? Like, you should probably think about getting something out of the business at this point. And we were kind of keen to do that, because just to remove any temptation, and these discussions take some time, and we didn't want to have those anymore. We want to just be fully focused on the road ahead. So all these things came together, and that's why we decided to raise the round of funding that we did.
So you raised some money. That money you took out personally, so yourself and your co-founder.
Part of it, yeah.
And then now you start doing some angel investing. Is that right?
Yeah. It's something that I've been keen to do since the beginning. It's been kind of a dream that to be able to give back in that way and help and be involved with other companies. So yeah, I've made 6 investments so far since kind of that liquidity event. So yeah, it's fun to be involved.
So I guess a little bit about yourself and kind of your drivers, because it strikes me, looking at, you've got a very successful company, you had a potential exit on the plate that could have, I'm guessing you're not allowed to tell us exactly how much the offer was for, but let's say $100 million or something, you would have walked away with yourself, and you turn that down because you believe in the movement you're leading with the culture and transparency and stuff that you're doing. What do you see as success? Why are you in this? What drives you?
I think for me it feels like that's something that keeps evolving over time. I think some people sometimes ask, like, oh, did you plan all of this? Did you think of it from the day one when I'm sat in my bedroom in Digbeth? And I could say that, and that might be a cool story, but that's not true at all. So, when I was sat in my bedroom in Digbeth, all I was thinking about is how can I get the revenues to a point where I can work on this full time rather than doing freelance work on the side. And I think what happens is when you hit that point, then it's kind of like you see the horizon, and then you almost reach the horizon, then you see further. And so I think that's what's happened for me. And so at this point now, it feels like, this is something that I really want to keep growing. And it's one of these things where, in terms of the movements around being a distributed team and self-management and things, people, there's still this question that comes up is, okay, maybe that works when you're 40 people, but how about when you're 400 people? And that's something that I want to explore, and it's exciting because it also means bringing more people into all this freedom as well of choosing wherever you want to live. There's people in the team that have kids, and they are able to not only not have a commute now, but also work from home and see their kids a lot more. And so whether people want to travel and explore the world, or they want to spend more time with their kids, just as two examples. And then also the freedom of choosing what you work on within the company as well. It feels like, in a way, we've kind of ended up with a whole different definition of work, because it's kind of quite far from what people might normally perceive as work. And so this is something that I'm excited for more and more people to be able to experience within the company, but also for us to grow, to a point where we can inspire other companies to try these things and show that it really can work.
So you yourself, part of your culture of Buffer is around self-improvement and being a better person, being more effective. You also have quite a number of habits yourself, and you've written about them quite a lot, about how things that you do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I find it really fascinating to think about habits, and interestingly, like when I travel, these habits break down a little bit, so I struggle to keep them up, but that's something I've learned to try and kind of handle. And whenever I do, I'm back somewhere for several months, I work quite quickly on building these habits back up. For me, exercising and going to the gym is just a really big one. I read a book called The Power of Habit, which is really great, and it talked about, one of the concepts in the book is the idea of, they call it keystone habits, and they've actually done studies and identified that exercise is a keystone habit, where what happens is if you have a regular exercise habit, then it actually spurs on other positive habits as well. So for me, it's been one of these things of trying to establish like a baseline habit, and then building on top of that, whether it's more frequency of exercise or whether it's other habits as well. So yeah, I also try and blog regularly, try and meet other like early stage entrepreneurs to help out and things like that. Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to go back a bit through the story, because we've got a whole bunch of questions that we need to answer. I guess one from not that far back is from Paul is, do you think you can increase the adoption of Buffer for business if you had a dedicated biz dev team?
Yeah, I guess in terms of a sales team, yeah. So for a while we've been a bit reluctant to look into sales, because we've struggled to see how it could fit well into the culture. Actually, one funny thing is, about a year and a half ago, we decided that we were going to grow a sales team. So we created a job listing for the first salesperson, and we advertised it. We ended up finding a really great guy who had been, he'd done sales for Google before, for Google Apps, so like Gmail, like the enterprise version of Gmail and things. And so he had really great experience. And he'd also had a unique experience where he decided to leave Google and spend a year traveling and learning to sail. And he sailed from Cape Town to Europe, a crazy trip, and all these things. So it felt like, in terms of self-improvement and these other things, he was a really good fit in the culture. And then, so Leo and I were chatting, and we realized, at that point we decided, like, we don't think sales is going to work. So basically we'd gone through the whole process with this guy, with Rodolphe, and a day before he was meant to start in the team, and we ended up emailing him saying, yeah, that role that you were going to join and do is like something that it's not a role anymore. And then, yeah, we thought maybe it's not going to work out, but he came back and, you know, just like any great biz dev or sales guy would, he kind of like was quite persuasive about other things he could do in the team, and that he was more, you know, really more interested in Buffer and the journey and the culture than specifically doing sales. So he's been really, really great, and he's done a lot of biz dev kind of work in the team since then. And now we're starting to just get back to the point of thinking like, actually we can probably do sales and approach it in a really unique way and think about unusual models without commission, and we're naturally going to be a fully remote sales team and things like that. So we're starting to look into it now, and it feels really great because now Rudolph's been part of the team for several retreats, and really is a really great fit and understands everything inside out. And so now he's kind of the perfect person to lead that. So I think we could increase the adoption a lot, and we're pretty excited to start experimenting with that.
Awesome. Hello. We might have to.
Oh, you lost it. Here you
We
go.
might have to share. So I love the way that you don't talk about you know, people being at Buffer for years. You talk about a number of retreats they've been on. So he's been for 2 retreats. Going back to when you were in that corridor, some of the questions there were around how do you decide what pricing plans that you were going to first test with those sort of lean startup tests? And that question came from Wazam. And then Ria asked, how do you get enough traffic to those pages to actually even see whether the numbers were right?
So in the earliest point, I think in a way it's good to think a little bit about pricing, but what I've learned is that you're always going to be wrong with your pricing. And so you may as well get it out there and then learn from it and then adjust it. So that's what we've done. And we've actually ended up changing our pricing 5 or 6 times along the journey. And we probably should have changed it more than that. I think one of the most compelling arguments I've found for the reason that you should be changing your pricing frequently is, I described how minimal the product was when we first launched. And the thing is, even within a few months, the product had changed drastically and actually was a lot more value for the money. So that's one thing that we ended up doing, was increasing the price after a little while. And I think that's something that's naturally always going to be the case is, as you keep growing, you're going to keep adding value to the product. So you should keep experimenting all the time with your pricing. But early on, I think you can't test that much. Like today we can do A/B tests and we have enough volume of traffic going through that we can really test things out and have statistical significance within a day or so and try a lot of different experiments. But I think early on you've got to put it out there, and the key is, what I've learned is, in terms of traffic and kind of A/B testing and metrics and things like that, which is all a big part of Lean Startup, and I was really excited about that. I realized that in the early days you don't have enough volume of traffic going through, so you have to really focus a lot more on the qualitative feedback of actually just speaking with people and talking with them. So talking with people that are using the product for free, asking what's stopping them paying, talking with people who are paying, what do they want as well. So yeah, early on, I was lucky in terms of driving traffic to the page. I mentioned I've been using Twitter for about 1.5 years, and by that point I'd got to about 1,500 followers on Twitter, and it also just so happened that the product was for Twitter users. So I just tweeted the link to the page, basically, that was it. But I think the way I would think about it now is that you really just have to think, where is that audience, where are those potential customers, and go there, whether it's a forum or a Facebook group or whatever it happens to be, or some offline event or something. You just really got to find those people and be talking with them.
And you also mentioned, obviously, you did a lot of ringing up people in the early days for that sort of qualitative feedback. Dan asked, what texts, other than How to Win Friends by Carnegie's How to Win Friends, have influenced your culture?
It's a great one, yeah. So How to Win Friends and Influence People heavily influence us, like the values we put in place for the culture. Another key one is Good to Great by Jim Collins. He has some really, really great parts in that book. He basically analysed 30 different companies that, public companies, where he had 30 companies, I think it's 60 companies that were all at the same point, and then 30 of them kind of went on to, to become great companies and really thrive, and 30 of them didn't do so well, and he basically analysed them and came up with a number of different principles for why these companies went on to go from good to great. Another one is called Joy at Work, which is by the founder of a company called AES, which is a big energy company in the US, and they reached 40,000, 50,000 employees at one point, and they're the company where the advice process came from. And the thing that they did was they turned the idea of management on its head. So they still had managers, but what they said is that a lot of the times managers end up being the ones that make all the key important decisions, when actually they're the ones furthest away from the problems. And so actually the people on the ground should be making those decisions. And so that's why they introduced the advice process, and they turned that idea of management on its head. They also dismantled the HR department when they were very large, and distributed HR across all the different teams, and that was also something that's made a lot of sense to me, because the argument is that the people that are going to work with the person should be the people that are interviewing and deciding whether that person should be part of the team. So yeah, a lot of ideas from that. I also wrote a blog post, 50 books that kind of, I think the title was 50 books that have transformed my business and my life. So if you just search Google for that, then you'll also get, or just search Joel Gascoigne books, you'll probably find that blog post.
Awesome. Ria asked, when you hire someone, what are the most important characteristics from you've obviously got a whole bunch of different ones. What are the key ones when you hire someone?
Yeah, it's really the fit within the culture. So there's a number of different values we have. For example, being a no ego doer is one of them. So we're looking for people that not trying to take credit. They're and so one of the ways that we'll kind of look for that is often what I find in an interview is people that we end up interviewing. We're lucky to get about 1,500 applications a month. So by the time someone gets to being in an interview, they're generally like really very, very experienced, and they probably could go out there and get many different options for where they might want to work. And so what I normally do in an interview is to say, to kind of really congratulate them and say, you've done so much, you've done all these things. At that point I've learned through the interview all the different things I've done. And I'll say, like, at this point you could probably do, there's many different options you could have. And basically what I'm doing is kind of praising them, and I just look out for, someone that might be like really living to that value might, say, oh, well, I had this great manager or this great mentor, or somebody that really helped me out, or just say like, well, I made a lot of mistakes, or just something like that. So that's one example. Another thing we look out for, one of the other values is positivity and happiness, and so this is one of the key ones that we often come across. And one of the key parts of that value, which comes from how to influence people, is the idea of not complaining, not criticizing people. And so, the idea is that doesn't help anyone if you do that. And so we're looking out for that, and that's one of the ones where we, sometimes we'll look through someone's Twitter stream and find that they're complaining about several different things, and we find that, okay, that's not a good fit for us.
Great. So if I want to work at Buffer, delete all my negative tweets first. Is that right?
It's maybe I can also just share.
Yeah, good.
It's very much an aspirational thing as well. So all the 10 values for us are like things that we're working to try and live up to. So yeah, we all slip up at times, but it's one of these things where is it still like that's just a pattern? So yeah.
Great. I think I have to do one Birmingham one, which came from Roy. So Buffer went to San Francisco what does Birmingham need to do to sort of retain some of the successful startups and make them stay in Birmingham?
That's an interesting one. Another opinion I have on this is that maybe there is value in people leaving and then being able to come back, because now I have the ability to invest and things, and I can probably actually maybe be of more value than if I maybe stayed here. So that's another kind of thought I have around that. I do think that things are really picking up a lot here, and there's really great things going on. And I think the fact that we are, like, Buffer did start here, and we're a distributed company, so you can grow your team and be everywhere, and people can be here. I think there isn't actually anyone in the team that is here right now, but there has been at different points. So yeah, I think it's possible. It's just probably is a matter of getting that community together so they can all be around like-minded people and have those conversations and push each other to make things happen.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for coming to Birmingham and giving a talk. It's been awesome to have you. Give you a round of applause for Joel.
Thank you.
Hope you found that as interesting as I did. But tell me, what did you think about what Joel discussed? Let me know in the comments below and on Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to see more videos like this, please give us a like, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Also check us out at nexi.tv/founders for more videos, news, and where to find our new TV show, which is going out across the UK. Until next time, I'm Ben, and thank you very much for watching.